So this is the first of 6 talks. The topic is acceptance, and the main theme of the talks is the ground of deep healing. And the reason that I felt acceptance came first is that for me, acceptance is the ground of all deep healing, along with the other qualities that we're going to explore in the coming weeks. But it seems to me that we're born into a time and a space and a culture in which we are expected to improve ourselves. We're forever expected to strive to be, faster, stronger, richer, more successful. That we're encouraged to examine those parts of us that are not working for us, to start afresh, start anew, to have goals and targets. I don't disagree with that, but my feeling is that so often what motivates us to change, or what motivates us to strive to do better, is a sense or a feeling that we're not good enough. So the very definition of I want to be X, Y, and Z says that what I am is not good enough. And that fear of not being good enough, that sense of inadequacy, is absolutely not the ground for healing. So what I feel, even if we're coming from a place of compassion, as soon as we decide we want to be something other than we are rejecting what we are. That doesn't mean necessarily that we should stop and not strive and not change and not grow. But that if we're frightened that we're not good enough, or that we won't be accepted as we are, or if we slide into an inertia, because acceptance is somehow inert, then in my opinion, the change is always going to be flawed. Nothing is going to be built on those foundations. Acceptance is not saying that something is okay. That comes quite strongly for me to say that acceptance is not saying this abusive relationship, I accept it. This underpaying situation, I accept it. It's not that we are settling for or giving up. It's that we have to accept the reality of our situation before we can change and move. And sometimes we're so caught up in movement and change and doing, that we haven't actually taken time to stop and just weigh up and take stock of exactly where we are. So that's what acceptance means in the first instance, is that we take stock and we open our eyes and we look at our situation and we just accept that what is there today. Another thing that comes to me to say quite strongly is this notion of acceptance being a passive process. I don't think that it is. In fact, I'm sure that it's not. Acceptance isn't letting go of the oars of the boat just to drift. Acceptance might well be just acknowledging that we're tired, that we might need a break, and then we can row some more. Or it might be, I'm nearly at land, I'm going to continue rowing, I have accepted the situation for what it is. When we think about healing, I guess we got caught up in the kind of Western medicine concept of curing. That if we're going to heal ourselves, we're going to cure ourselves. And how many of us have found that we can't be 100% cured and therefore we always feel broken? When actually the truth of the matter is that we were not created to be perfect. If we were created to be perfect, We wouldn't need to be here. We wouldn't be on this earth. We could be angels, we could be demigods, but we wouldn't be human. So somewhere along the line, acceptance is an acknowledgement of our imperfection and giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, giving ourselves permission to have flaws, to get things wrong, to learn. That may mean that we have to accept that there are times in our lives where we're hurt, we've either hurt ourselves or we've hurt others, because that's part of being human. And a lot of the illness that we suffer or the pain that we suffer in life stems from the difference between the reality and what we think we should be. So the point of suffering is in the should or shouldn't. I should feel like this, I shouldn't behave like that. And there's some wisdom in stripping away that sense of should and shouldn't, or ought and oughtn't, or I should be X and Y. And just returning to just being. And just sitting and connecting into the beingness of you. And allowing whatever feelings, whatever judgments, whatever emotions come with the being, with you. Accept them as well. And the time has come, and I can see it in the world around us, the time has come to look at things completely differently. We live in a value-driven society that weights action over being. But the measure of who we are as human beings is not how much we can pack into a day or how much we can do. It's who we are. The content of our hearts, our ability to love, to be a presence of love. And when we find that we can be, free from the burden of having to do, we start to remember. And that remembering is a piecing together of those moments of our lives where we have experienced connection. Remembering those things that make us happy, things that we did that gave us joy, the people that we connected with that made us feel loved. And little by little, we remember who we really are. Not defined by our certificates on the walls or the money in our account or the number of friends we've got. Defined by an innate sense of being divine. Of there being a fragment of God alive within our hearts. If we believe that we were created by whatever source, whatever force created us, it didn't have anything but itself to create us from, or else it was not the original source. So whatever we understand the source of our life to be, we are not separate from it. We are part of it. And anything that happens to us or through us is of the same creation. And when we come down to deciding that something is right and something else is wrong, something else is good and something else is bad, we start to separate out into the black and the white. And in doing so, we start to disconnect from that sense of being one. And the ground of all fear is judgment. And we always place the burden of that judgment in other people and say that I am frightened of being judged, when actually it's only us that really judges ourselves. If we can, in clear conscience, sleep well at night, then what other people think of us just simply doesn't matter. The journey into healing is the journey into self-acceptance, acceptance of others as they are, and a relinquishing of the ideal that we need to change to be any more worthy of God's love. But that said, change is inevitable. Change is the constant. But we can decide for ourselves whether we want to be the passive recipient of change. Change is happening to us and the external circumstances are changing us, and therefore we're a victim and we're passive. Or we can decide that within the bounds of change will happen and is happening and is always there. We can be part of that process. We can step out of the passive into the active and actively accept, actively forgive and release. And in doing so, when we take an active part in the creation of our reality, we cease to be a victim. We become captain of our own ship. And there's something very important in that sense of being captain of our own ship. So much is said about doing God's will. It is my belief that God's will works through us. And that's something that I've had to accept. That my desires, my hopes and dreams, what comes to me, what inspires me, what lifts me and moves me, is God's will. And so when I stop doing what everyone else wants me to do, and I invite everybody else just to take a moment to stop doing what everybody else wants you to do, to just be in acceptance of the self and of the situation you find yourself in. You can hear the whisper, and it starts as a whisper, and then it becomes a heartbeat, then it becomes a voice, and before you know it, you're singing God's song. And then you can move. Then you can act. Then you can take strides, you can run, you can do anything you want to do in that direction. Because that is the change that is intended for you. And it may be that that direction is not what you think it should be. And that's where trust comes in. Having some faith to step out of that stillness, forwards into life. That's a leap of faith. And it'll always pay off. I think I'll leave it there. That's talk number 1 on the topic of acceptance.